Well, this 2007 Chevy Cobalt 2.2 liter Ecotech engine's being a real bearcat on me. Crazy, but I just basically put a serpentine belt on it, and when I went to start it after that, the thing just coughs and sputters, and now it just turns over without any kind of sense that it's going to start at all. Alright, go ahead and crank it. Okay, go ahead and crank it again. So the night before I had done a throttle body cleaning, put it all back together, got in, started the car, started right off, revved it up, let it idle for a few seconds, revved it up a couple times, okay, everything's cool, shut it off. Alright, everything sounds good, started pretty easy, so that's all there is to a throttle body cleaning. Next day I come out here, jacked it up, took the wheel off over here, took the cover plate off, put on a new serpentine belt, threw everything, all the covers and everything back together, getting to be about a little after 11 o'clock on a work night, so thought, well, I'll just go ahead and crank her over, make sure she's cool. Got in there and it kind of went what in the heck just happened? So I came out, checked for anything obvious that I'd forgot a connector or a hose popped off or something, but couldn't think of anything that would cause it to do that. Got back in, cranked it. This time it's just looks like it's not firing at all. So far I've checked to see we've got spark in all 4 cylinders. I've got my fuel pressure gauge on here, and we've got plenty of pressure, and it stays after we shut the engine off. Then I've taken some starting fluid, and while I had all the spark plugs and everything, coil packs connected as normal, I had my assistant crank it over while I shot some starting fluid into here, and I expected that if it was a fuel problem, like no fuel, that it would have, acted like it was going to sputter and catch, but it really just didn't. So the next step is to actually pull out the plugs one at a time, screw my compression tester in there. We're going to check the 4 cylinders for compression. I just have no idea. There's a mass airflow sensor, there's cam position sensor, there's a crank position sensor down there. There's an engine control module that now does the work of an ICM. There is no longer a separate ignition control module. The function of that has been incorporated into the engine control module. So I'm kind of at a loss right now. Spark, I've shot fuel in there, and I just get nothing. I don't have a good explanation, but we got this beast running today. I had a buddy of mine come over. He's got a real fancy scanner, probably $1,500 type thing. He was able to go through, do a lot of checks, checking a lot of stuff. We seem to get maybe some kind of communication error, maybe something with the ECU. There seemed to be an evap code error, which I've had before, the P0446. Cleared all those things. Nothing was making sense. Crank, 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 crank. It'd sputter, sputter, sputter. Wouldn't stay running. I was checking fuel pressure again, and for some reason I wasn't getting fuel pressure. It was kind of weird. And then I kept, unscrewing and screwing my fuel pressure gauge back on. I said, "You got the key on?" He's like, "Yeah, key's on." So I'm like, "Oh, that's weird." I'm like, "Is my gauge bad? I don't know what the deal is," but all of a sudden, the gauge started to go up, and I'm like, "Well, no, now I've got pressure." He cranked it, boom, started right off. He's like, "The only thing I did was I reset the fuel trim." He goes, "The fuel trim seemed extremely high." I think he mentioned like 30 or something. I'm not sure. I have to look what those units are. But all he did was reset that fuel trim, and it just immediately started and ran just fine. Now, out of abundance of caution, he said, "This is a new car. I'd filled it up when I bought it in a different town." He said, "You might want to just run up to the gas station, top it off, just in case you got some bad fuel." But, basically that fuel trim is trying to compensate for, E85, gas with no alcohol, gas with, 10% alcohol, whatever. But somehow it got way whacked out. Maybe some kind of a random glitch. Maybe, I wiggled a wire, maybe when the battery went dead, but, maybe some kind of a communication error. Can't really say. All I know is reset the fuel trim, it's running fine. So it went from just nothing to perfect with doing nothing but resetting fuel trim. Alright, this is a crazy world. I've been trying to get this engine to start now for like 3 days, just messing around. With the coronavirus, we're all shuttled in, nobody's going anywhere, so I don't need the car. So I've been thinking, hey, this is a good opportunity to, try and use your diagnostic skills, or well, let's say improve my diagnostic skills. So I've been messing around, cam position, crank position, checking spark, fuel pressure, all of that stuff. Nothing's working. Just crank, 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 won't start. I don't believe it. But today my daughter comes in, and my 2002 Grand Am out here is doing the exact same thing. I'm thinking, is somebody sabotaging my cars, sugar in the gas tank, something like that? What are the odds? This is craziness. Now I want to show you something with the brown one. Okay, the brown one is running right now. It's running fine. I'll explain the sequence here in a minute, but for this session, it started with the remote start. So I'm going to go ahead and tap the brake. I tap the brake, the engine shuts off. Alright. Now, I'm going to go ahead, put the key in the ignition down here. Are you kidding me? What? What in the Sam Kennison is going on here? But up here we've got this security light flashing. I'm like, what in the heck? So I'm going to turn the key off. Now I'm going to take my remote control and I'm going to push and hold this button here. Keys are in my hand. I didn't do that. If you use the remote start, it starts fine. Now I thought, maybe it needs to be reset or something. So hey, let's put the key in the ignition. Turn it on. I'm gonna go ahead and act like I'm driving. So I shift into reverse, back up, shift into drive. Pull into the driveway here. Put her in park, shut the key off, take it out. Alright, let's say I come back out later on today, go to start the car. Are you kidding me? What? Again, I'm going to take the key out. push remote start. There she blows. Okay. Well, we have a huge clue here as to what the problem is. Something to do with the security system. Now I'm wondering, is this the same problem related to my red one in the garage? It's acting the exact same way. With that one, I do have a code on there, so the remote start won't work until I clear that code. I'm going to clear the code, try remote start on that one. Okay, now I'm in the 2007 Cobalt. Got my scanner hooked up. Go ahead and turn the key on. Hopefully this dinger stops here pretty soon. Go ahead and so it's got one code. I'm going to erase that code. Whoops, well maybe first I'll show you what that code is. It's basically that, oh no, there's no codes. Well, this kind of shoots my theory in the foot. There's no codes. So I had cleared those before. Alright, well, that was a thought. Let's see, I'm going to try the remote start anyway. I'm going to go ahead and just for the fun of it, erase codes. Erase codes, yes. Done. Alright, now we're going to try remote start. Alright, I just real quick whipped this thing back together, put on the air box and all that so the mass airflow sensor would work. I'm going to give it a shot. Let's see. You have to push unlock and then start. Not gonna do it. Okay, gonna do it. Okay, well, at least we have a clue on the brown one. It's not the answer on this one. Now I just looked in here. Now I just looked, oops. Well, it was flashing. Well, is it? Yeah, what's going on? That security thing keeps coming on, or is that telling me that it's armed or something? I don't know. I'm suspicious though if this security thing is keeping me from getting this car to start. Alright, I've got my seatbelt on now, so that one went away. So let's, turn it to try and start it. Here. No RPM show up there. I am getting actually some acting like it wants to start, which it's never been doing here lately. Turn the key off, key on. Let some things settle down. I don't know, made some attempt to start there. Boy, I wish this thing would throw me a code that I could use. I'm not sure why when I turn this on, it's going to show there's a code. The check engine light is on, but there is no code when I read them. So it could be a clue. Okay, I'm going to push the lock. Starts flashing security. Try and start it. Headlights were flashing up there, but decides not to try and start. And still flashing that security thing, but would not even attempt to crank. Seems a little crazy, but these cars, the battery is in the trunk. I was going to come back here and disconnect the negative battery cable and leave it unhooked for like, 10, 30 minutes, whatever, see if that would reset a computer. I thought, you know what, I'm going to measure the battery voltage. I did, and I measure like 11.8. Should be more like 13.2. Now, yeah, I've been cranking this thing over a lot, but I have been putting the battery charger on it at night. One thing that I thought of, though, is the other day, something got left on, and it ran the battery completely down. So I jumped it, got it going. Seemed like it worked for a few days. But what if this computer is so smart that it says you've only got 11.84 volts? I'm not going to let it start. Not running. So just desperation, I put the jumper cables on the van. The jumper cables on over here. Went in, cranked it. It kind of fired and ran a little bit. One of the interesting things about this issue is it seems to kind of want to run after I let off the key. But when you're cranking it, it just sounds like there's nothing. Then you let off and you get a little... Oh yes. Thank you, Lord, for finally you're giving me a code. I'd always thought it was probably the camshaft position sensor or the crank, but the crank was giving me RPM on this thing here, so my best bet was camshaft. But then again, dumbass, you had the sensor disconnected while you were doing a test, so that doesn't mean anything. Okay, I just watched a video on an 07 Cobalt where the guy said that he had run the battery down and then he had charged it back up or put a new battery in, whatever, but when he went to start it, it would not start. I don't know if it just cranked like this one or not, but it would not start. And he had the little security lock key down there. He said in his case the solution was to grab the other key and try and start it. If this works, I am going to be happy, but it's going to be really crazy. Let's see what we got. I didn't think that would work because I did run the battery down dead, but I had charged it up and I'm pretty sure I had taken it out for drives after the battery was dead, so that was not it. I have visually confirmed the spark. I have sprayed starting fluid into the throttle body. Really got no response with kicking over. However, one thing that bothers me is out of all this cranking that I've done with this thing not starting, I just have not smelled gas, even in this closed garage. So I'm going to look at the injectors a little closer. There's also a fuse for the injectors. There's also the possibility that this thing is somehow not starting because of a theft security system. That doesn't seem quite right because the lock icon is not on. However, it sure is strange. When you crank, it won't show here on the tack, but it will show here on the meter. Yesterday, out of desperation, I had checked all the fuses in the engine fuse box. Using a flashlight, you can shine down or behind them. You can usually see if there are wires in there or not. A couple of them I had to pull. Then I pulled the console fuse panel, and those fuses, couldn't check them with a flashlight. So I checked the ones that said like, pass lock 3, ECU, anything like that. Pulled those out, checked them. They were all fine. Then out of desperation, I pulled all the spark plugs out, cleaned them off with some brake clean and a brass brush, put them back in there just in case they'd gotten glazed with carbon. When I had done that throttle body cleaning, afterwards I had started it up, revved it up a couple times, shut it off, and did not run it again until The following night, after I changed the serpentine belt, went to start it, absolutely nothing. So I thought, I'm trying anything. That didn't work. I do have new spark plugs, so I'm going to go ahead and install those now that we've got it fixed. The only theory I have is that I did let the battery run down one night. I think I was checking the P446 code. I don't know, or maybe, I just really don't know, but I let the battery run down at one time. And I may have left the ignition key on. Now this car has some features. It tries to protect itself. It won't start if the battery's too low, won't even crank, that kind of stuff. But perhaps when the battery ran down, the key was on, the computer got messed up and got confused. I don't know. The car's fixed now. It was resetting the fuel trim that fixed it. But I just wanted to show you how it responds even now that it's fixed. The change engine light does come on and stay on when I just turn the key on. So before I thought that was odd that check engine light stayed on. But I just got done using the remote start to start it. It's working fine. Appears a new gas cap may have solved the P0446 code, so now the remote start is working now that the check engine light is cleared, although you wouldn't know it from here. But now I'll go ahead and start the car. And everything is clear now. For the P0446 code, a lot of times it's the gas cap. I did get a new Stant gas cap, and notice this one has more like an O-ring down there that kind of fits inside of that tube. Now I want to show you the old one, which I just bought this car, so I don't know if this was ever changed, but you can see that this one has more like a flat gasket that kind of would rub up against this this outer surface instead of going down inside. So who knows whether this was the wrong cap. I've double checked and this is the right number cap, and so far it's been 3 days of several starts and stops and that code has not come back yet. So may have just been the gas cap, and it could be that the wrong one was on there to begin with, or it could just be that they both work somehow, but this one's just got some kind of failure to it. You do want to have this surface here, take some steel wool and just, clean this surface. I actually take a little dielectric grease like you put on spark plugs and just kind of rub on there after I've smoothed that with some steel wool. You just want to have a good surface for these gaskets to mate to. Just going to run through these. This is with the engine off. Okay, then we'll start the engine here in a second. I just cleared the P0446 code. Auto lights off, cool. Alright, so here's your live data. Alright, there's first screen. that's it. So look at that second screen there. So we get to the mass airflow. There's mass airflow. It's going to go up as you step on the gas from the 0.619. Throttle position 22%. I don't have my foot on the gas. You can see the two oxygen sensors working away there. They don't. We'd have to view that. Let's see. Escape. Okay, it's mad already. It's already come back with the P0446, so that's in the pending codes right now.